Hi, welcome to Moonlit Love Stories. Imagine your sister's husband brings home a pregnant mistress. Most would just cry, but our female lead? She takes the ultimate revenge by marrying his father and becoming the man's new stepmother. I'm obsessed with this story because it's a refreshing take on female solidarity. It's not about sisters fighting but protecting each other with a sharp, witty vibe. Plus, the dynamic between the poison master bride and her powerful general husband is just pure gold. Let's dive into the story. To back up my soft-hearted half-sister, I married into the same family she did. She married the young general, and I ended up married to his father, the commanding general. After the wedding, the young general returned from the battlefield with a delicate little beauty who was already pregnant. My half-sister wiped her tears, finally finding some strength. "I want a divorce," I said. "All right. If you're leaving, I'm leaving too." But before our divorce papers even reached the young general, we heard he'd been punished and forced to kneel in the ancestral hall. His father stood over him, face completely blank, the family whip in hand, striking him until his skin split open. "You ungrateful son," he said coldly. "If you want your father to end up a widower, just say it plainly." I was the illegitimate daughter of a censor's household. My half-sister and I were known throughout the capital as the most harmonious pair of girls who shared a father but not a mother. The only reason: my sister was an easy target. My mother died when I was young, and I grew up in a Taoist temple watching people switch faces like changing masks. So it was no surprise to anyone that I grew into a woman with sharp edges and no sentimentality. Before a banquet, wanting to embarrass her, I stepped hard on the hem of her dress. The sound of expensive brocade tearing was unmistakable. She turned, looked at her ruined dress, then looked at me, reacting a bit too slow. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to put my hem under your foot." I just stared at her. What? She really was a bit slow. And honestly, picking on someone who was both slow and kind-hearted didn't excite me much. If anything, whenever someone set her up or tried to humiliate her, I would step in, not because I liked her that much, but because I looked down on people who bullied someone who wasn't even their match. One of those scheming women lost her chance to frame my sister and turned on me. "What is that supposed to mean, Jiang Shushua?" I toyed with the teacup in my hand, bored. "My sister and I are close. You dare pick on her? Did you ask me first?" The boiling tea slipped from my fingers and splashed all over her. My half-sister lived long enough to reach marriage age only because I shielded her. And yet, in just the 3 short days she returned home after her wedding, the moment she wasn't under my watch, someone treated her like an easy pick again. Her husband was the capital's rising star, the young General Pei Huai. It should have been a good match. But he was arrogant, temperamental, and rumored to be in love with someone else. He had no regard for my sister's dignity, left her alone on their wedding night, and turned her into a laughingstock. My poor girl. My father's wife had never been one with ideas. All she could do was hold her daughter and cry. Even my father, who never hesitated to lecture the emperor, could only sigh. "Just endure it. There's nothing we can do. You're married into their family now. Besides, the Payne family holds the military power in the Northwest. What could we possibly do to them?" Truly my biological parents, consistently useless. I got tired of listening. I lifted my heavy eyelids and growled. "And you expect her to just put up with this?" The moment I spoke, my sister and her mother swallowed their sobs, afraid to make a sound. Even my father, who barely raised me, looked uneasy under my glare. Silence fell. All eyes turned to me. "I'll go with her," I said. My father's wife and my father both froze. "You mean you'll become Pei Huai's concubine?" "No," I looked at them, enunciating clearly. "I'm going to be Pei Huai's mother. I wouldn't be the young general's bride. But I could become his new mother." His father, Pei Shu, a central commanding general with military power in his hands, widowed for years, never remarried. If I married Pei Shu, I would have every right to discipline Pei Huai. And then he would finally understand exactly whose sister he had offended. Mind out a woman who didn't know how to be soft. I understood people better than anyone. With just 3 sentences, I got Pei Shu to agree to a formal betrothal and a grand wedding procession for me. "Pei Shu, you've been widowed for years. People say you were injured on the battlefield and can no longer perform as a man. I'm good at putting on a show. If you marry me, I can make this entire city believe you're very capable. A powerful man who never remarried and had only one son. What other reason could there be? When it came to reading a household's secrets, I was a professional. Peishua blinked. What? He was a seasoned general, every movement shaped by harsh winds and burning sun. When he lifted his eyes to meet mine, the air seemed to freeze. For a moment, the silence stretched endlessly. Then suddenly, the tension shattered. A faint, amused smile tugged at his lips. All right, he said. I'll trouble you, Miss Zhang, to cover for me from now on. Peishua had been a widower for many years, so when he finally remarried, half the city wanted to sneak a look at what kind of woman could possibly win him over. Pei Huai included. He was the very reason I married into the Pei family in the first place. So when he was stopped outside the bridal chamber, I crouched by the wall to eavesdrop. I heard father married a beautiful young lady, he said with a bright laugh. I came to give my blessings and wish you to a lifetime of harmony. Most people wouldn't hit someone offering well wishes, but when Peishua heard him, his face went completely dark. His voice was clipped and cold, like he was biting the inside of his cheek to stop himself from hitting his own son. Save your blessings. Whether your father and your new mother live in harmony depends entirely on how you treat your wife. Pei Huai froze. What? He didn't understand why his father was angry, but I did, because Peishua and I often discuss parenting, at any time that I in any place. Just like now, Peishua strode toward me. The red wedding candles flickered as he entered. He wore dark red wedding robes, and his white sash drew a sharp line around his broad shoulders and narrow waist. Sharp brows, striking eyes, a straight nose, beautiful in the way a drawn sword is beautiful. Dangerous and impossible to ignore. And what was I doing? Ruining the atmosphere by grabbing some dates and dried longan from the bridal canopy. I chewed loudly. You can't do that, husband. That's not how you talk to him. Peishua lowered his gaze, reached into the canopy as well, and silently peeled a longan for me. He handed it over. I eat while talking. A few stiff sentences won't make him understand how important marital harmony is to this family. You talk too harshly, and you'll only make him rebel. I launched into a full lecture on parenting. Peishua let out a cold huff, turned his face away, and muttered, You keep bringing him up. You make it sound like you only married me for my son. I blinked. What else would it be? If he hadn't married my sister, why would I marry his father? Then a thought struck me. My gaze slid downward, lingering meaningfully on a certain area. Out of the remaining kindness in my heart, I softened slightly. Well, partly. The other part was because he was rumored to be incapable in bed. Perfect for someone like me, someone who didn't want children and thought it was far too troublesome to have to deal with unwanted pregnancies. So there really is a part of you that married me because of my son. Peishua didn't know that the other part of my reasoning involved his supposed incapability. Still, he was clearly unhappy with my answer. His expression cooled. Then he suddenly scooped me up by the waist and knees. The world spun, and he set me firmly on the bed before stripping off his dark red wedding robe. He asked, Would it kill you to like me a little more? He leaned closer, voice low. My wife. Rain slammed against the tiles outside. The red candles burned tall and straight until dawn. I felt like a tiny boat tossed in a storm. No control, no escape. Somewhere in the haze, one thought drifted through my mind. Whoever said he couldn't perform was lying. He could perform so well I wanted to kill him and become a widow. The next morning, his rough hand slid around my waist, wondering where it shouldn't. I caught it, forcing a smile. Husband, you have work today. He nipped at my neck like an overgrown dog. It's fine. I already sent someone to report I'm sick. Because Peishua was jealous of how I talked about Pei Huai, and because I now held Pei Huai's weak spot firmly in my hand. Any time he mistreated my sister, all I had to do was walk into the academy where he studied in. Teacher, why is Pei Huai sitting in the last row today? Teacher, why does Pei Huai say the lessons are too easy, and he isn't learning anything meaningful? You heartless old man, are you targeting our Pei Huai? I'll have the authorities arrest you. Pei Huai despised literature, but thanks to me, the scholars teaching him always gave him special attention. He complained to Peishu, Pei Shua didn't even look up. Stop making things up. Your grades have always been terrible. All you do is play with weapons. Your mother has a hard time being your stepmother. Maybe reflect on yourself for once. After all these years, have you ever studied properly? Pei Huai froze in horror. He could only grit his teeth, swallow his anger, and return home every day to sit with my sister in gloomy silence. A strange but functional arrangement. But recently, an imperial order sent him out to suppress a rebellion. I was playing leaf cards with my sister when I noticed how distracted she looked. I said casually, "It's just a rebellion. Not dangerous. Play your card." She refocused, then whispered, "It's not the danger. I heard Pei Huai brought back a pregnant woman on his way home." Instant alarm bells rang in my mind. What woman? His sweetheart. Pei Huai had a sweetheart with practically zero presence. A woman named Su Yan, a performer of low status, someone who could never appear in the main household. My sister nodded honestly. Yes. My smile vanished. I straightened, eyes turning sharp. So what do you plan to do? She looked at me, fully aware that if she wanted, I could quietly make someone disappear without leaving a trace. With my abilities, and my status as the elder's wife, removing a woman was hardly a challenge. But she stayed silent for a long time before finally making a decision. Sister, I want a divorce. Even a clay doll has a temper. Pei Huai had trampled her dignity too many times. I felt like a proud parent watching my child grow up. Without hesitation, I said, "Fine. If you divorce, I divorce too." That evening, Pei Shuo came home, took off his armor, and clung to me as usual, until he spotted the neat handwriting on the divorce papers in my hand. He tried to act calm, glancing at them dozens of times out of the corner of his eye. Divorce papers? Yours. Why are you divorcing me? Did that brat Pei Hua anger you? Or did his wife's family upset you? Even through clothing, I could feel his heart about to leap out of his chest. He was firing questions too fast, so I picked one to answer. No, I wrote it for my sister. His spine slowly relaxed. He let out a long breath. Good. It's not too late then. He celebrated far too early. Inside I thought, you fool. Mine is already written. It's on the shelf. My sister had always been timid, soft as a rabbit. But once she made up her mind, she looked energized, eyes bright when she came to greet me the next morning. Do you have a plan? But I was exhausted with dark circles under my eyes. Don't visit so early. I'm tired. What happened? She asked. I gritted my teeth. I got mauled by a dog last night. Damn you, Peisho. I must divorce. My sister took it literally and scolded me for being careless before we returned to discussing the plan. We finished the divorce papers and finalized every step exactly as Pei Huai returned in triumph, and the always arrogant young general carefully helped a beautiful woman down from the horse. She looked like a lotus bloom at the height of summer, dewdrops trembling on her petals, glowing with delicate charm. Pei Huai shielded her belly, already softly rounded. He scanned the crowd, then settled his gaze on my sister. Nian is pregnant. No one in this household is allowed to mistreat her. Otherwise, he didn't finish, but the threat was clear. The servant's eyes flicked between the woman and my sister. Whispers cut through her like knives. No wonder the general doesn't care for the young lady. This one is breathtaking. She's already pregnant. A few dare to defend my sister. I heard she's not a proper woman. Keeping her as a mistress is one thing, but bringing her home? That's humiliating to the young lady. But the noises blurred together into a messy roar. Following our plan, my sister bit her lip. Her lashes cast shadows under her eyes. She looked heartbreakingly forlorn. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She turned away, face streaked with wetness, but her expression wasn't sad. I supported her, whispering in her ear, "Yes, just like that. When you return to your room, don't let anyone disturb you. Put the divorce papers right where everyone can see them. Tell them you want to go out with me to clear your mind. Everyone will think you're devastated by Pei Huai. No one will imagine we're using this chance to divorce." Our plan was flawless, until a thunderous voice crashed down on us. "You unfilial brat, get over here." Not far away, Pei Shua had just returned from court, still wearing blood-stained armor. Mounted on a tall horse, he looked down at Pei Huai with a terrifying gaze that made everyone shiver. Even the wildest son turns into a trembling rabbit when faced with a father who actually has authority. Pei Huai tried to run, but his father moved faster. In one quick motion, he hauled him over a shoulder and slammed him onto the stone floor of the ancestral hall. Dust flew everywhere. Pei Huai practically ate a mouthful of it. My sister and I stood in the corridor leading to the hall when a servant ran up to report. The young general has been punished and ordered to kneel in the ancestral hall. Moments later, another servant came running. The master has brought out the family whip. Inside the ancestral hall, the air was solemn and heavy. Pei Huai only dared let out quiet whimpers as the lashes landed. But Pei Shua's voice carried clearly to where we stood. So you've grown bold now? A lash. You think you can bring any woman you want into this household? Another lash. Pei Shua's expression didn't change, but the cold fury in his eyes surged with every strike. Ungrateful brat. If you want your father to become a widower, say it plainly. My sister stood outside, shadows from the branches falling across her face. For a moment I couldn't read her expression. Pang shot through my chest. I asked, "Do you still want that divorce?" She'd always been gentle, soft-hearted. Seeing Pei Shuo defending her like this, she might get moved. And after this beating, Pei Huai would surely restrain himself for a while. She might hesitate, right? But she asked me instead, "What about you?" Since I married into the Pei family mostly to support her, it was natural that I followed her lead. "Depends on you. If you leave, I leave." Unexpectedly, she said, "Then I want the divorce." Excellent. And after living under my influence, my sister had become decisive. She turned around and walked off without hesitation. I reached out and grabbed her wrist, stopping her. "Hold on." She looked back, confused. I said, "Everywhere outside requires bribing someone. It's cheaper not to stay here. Take everything you can. No need to waste money later. And since things have changed from our original plan, and Pei Huai is still getting beaten in the ancestral hall, we shouldn't waste this chance." I dragged her back with me. Any box that held silver notes or land deeds gone. The rosewood 1,000-work canopy bed she was used to taken. We stripped everything valuable. I even scraped the gold leaf off the pillars. My sister stared at me in shock. Carrying bags on my back and in both hands, I asked, "What about your things?" "Got them all." My sister thought for a moment, then swiftly marched into the small kitchen where an old palace chef had retired. His signature dish was crispy phoenix tail shrimp. She packed him up too. Our escape went unbelievably smoothly, mainly because Pei Shua was fully occupied beating his son and had no idea that we were treating the Pei estate like a clearance sale. It wasn't until he tired himself out, set the family whip back on its stand, and left the ancestral hall that he noticed something was wrong. He narrowed his phoenix eyes and scanned the estate. The Pei household had been cleaned out so thoroughly that only the load-bearing walls remained, and 2 divorce papers neatly placed on the bookshelf. Pei Shi just stared. As for how Pei Shu and Pei Huai reacted, we had no idea. Halfway down the road, I suddenly stopped walking. "What is it?" my sister asked, struggling with her luggage and nearly bumping into me. I said, "We can't go home. Our parents were such cowards they wouldn't even need Pei Shua to show up in person. If he merely sent word, they'd immediately drag us both back and lecture us about behaving and not causing trouble." So we agreed instantly. We turned and headed to a security escort agency, hired more than a dozen guards, switched carriages repeatedly along the way, traveled from the desert of the northwest all the way down to the misty rivers of the south, and lived freely, rich, idle, and answerable to no one. The world lost 2 miserable inner courtyard wives, and gained 2 wealthy, beautiful young widows enjoying their best life. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Back then, the story of how my half-sister and I teamed up to divorce the Pei men and cleaned out the entire Pei estate before we left was the city's favorite piece of gossip. The Pei family even posted notices everywhere, promising 1,000 taels to anyone who could provide clues about our whereabouts. For a while, peddlers, street rogues, and idle wonders all hunted for our tracks. But time erases everything. Now no one talks about it anymore. Even the wanted posters have yellowed and curled at the edges. I figured the Payne family should have recovered from losing a bit of property by now. Their anger should have cooled too, so here we were. My half-sister and I sitting in a private VIP room at the newest pleasure house in the capital, Nanfeng Court, being waited on by more than a dozen attendants. Someone kneaded my shoulders, someone massaged my legs, someone peeled grapes, someone fed wine. Someone danced. They had everything. My half-sister was a little tense, but I, on the other hand, was perfectly at ease, being pampered from both sides. I nudged her. Don't be shy. Have some fun. Doesn't that one over there look just like Pei Shu? You want me to give that one to you? She squinted, studying him. He really does look like him. I added, and it's not just the face. Even the vibe is similar. She nodded. The way he moves too. If his voice matched, he'd practically be the same person. And right at that moment, both our hearts skipped. We looked at each other. Of course, just as expected, an all-too-familiar voice cut through the air, and flashes of certain entangled moments hit me all at once. Jiang Shushua. I lifted my eyes. Everything seemed to freeze. The world went quiet. Not far away, the young man I had mistaken for an attendant stood wrapped in a fox fur cloak, his eyes sharp and unblinking as they locked onto me. Fury simmered in them, impossible to hide. It was Pei Shu, no doubt about it. I had always known this moment would come. Even though a jolt of shock ran down my spine, I still kept my composure. Say what you came to say. Before he could speak, my half-sister, who had been shy just moments ago, snatched the attendant from my arms and slapped her hand over my poisonous mouth. She was truly afraid Pei Shu would beat me to death right there, so she took all the blame herself. Sir, it was my idea to drag Mother here to this inappropriate place. She tried to lecture me, but I begged and begged, so she... Pei Shu shot her a look, voice unreadable. If you have that much free time, go find the imperial physician and have your spine checked. I'm worried someone your age can't handle carrying a blame this heavy. With a few words, he shut her up completely. He was furious. Absolutely furious. I handed him a cup of water. Drink. Cool off. Pei Shu took the tea, took a sip, then slowly lifted his eyelids. The whites of his eyes showed beneath a dark mole at the corner. He looked downright dangerous. Why are you here? I answered without fear. To have some fun. What else? Of course, I was also capable of saying something nicer like, I slipped back into the capital because I wanted to see you from afar, just to make sure you're doing well. But I had no interest in telling pretty lies. Everyone knows. When someone is so angry they're speechless, they laugh. Pei Shu actually laughed out of rage. His chest rose sharply once, then he collapsed on the spot. As his weight fell toward me, I caught him and poked his shoulder. Pei Shu. Pei Shu. No response. My half-sister leaned in. That fast? The medicine worked that fast this time. Proudly I said, improved formula. He'll be out for at least 3 days. I was a poison master. Raised in a temple, calm and gentle on the surface, mercury and lead hidden underneath. This wasn't the first time we'd run into pursuers. And every time my poison saved us. Come on. I brushed imaginary dust off my clothes and held out my hand to my half-sister. Don't just stand there. Patience POV. Darkness pressed in from every direction. His eyelids felt impossibly heavy. Pei Shu wanted to call out, to tell Jiang Shushua not to leave, but she only lowered her head, cut off the hem of her skirt, and left a strip of fabric between his fingers. The moment he collapsed, one memory surged up. The first time he ever saw her. Back then, Jiang Shushua hadn't come of age yet. She hadn't been taken back to the Jiang family, and was still living in the temple as a young priestess. Pei Shu had been the heavily wounded stranger she dragged in from the roadside, just like the cliché beginning of countless cheap storybooks. Except when he woke up, he immediately held a blade to her neck. And Jiang Shushua didn't even bother looking up. She just kept grinding herbs. No wonder every story says the men you drag home never turn out to be good people. If you know that, why do you rescue me? She smiled. Relax. I'm not exactly a good person either. At that time, Pei Shu's face was disfigured, his meridian shattered, and he could barely stand, which made him perfect for what she needed, a living test subject. Jiang Shushua had countless experimental medicines. Knockout powders, salves to heal scars, formulas meant to repair his broken meridians. Pei Shua lost count of how many drugs she tested on him. By the time he developed resistance to the knockout powder, his relationship with her had already changed. When he heard she was a Zhang family daughter, soon to return to the capital, he asked, "If I go to the capital with you, will you let me be your protector?" Zhang Shushua gave him a lazy glance. "No, I'm going to the capital to make a name for myself. You're not a protector, you're a burden." She said that, but still, when she left, she wrote him a note with careful instructions, reminding him to change the medicine on his face. Change it 3 times a day. Remove the bandages after 7 days. But the knockout powder didn't work as well as she expected. Pei Shua was unconscious for barely half an hour. When he woke, Pei Huai was at his side. Pei Shua grabbed his wrist, veins bulging, and said 2 things. First, "I saw Jiang Zhushuai and Jiang Wanyang." Second, "Send everyone. Find them." By the time he spoke the last word, Pei Huai's armor rang like a warning bell. "Yes, father." Sitting in Nanfeng Court, Pei Shua looked down at the strip of warm fabric still in his hand, a murderous chill rising in his eyes. He would never allow her to abandon him again. Not again. Not ever. I didn't expect the knockout powder's effect to fade that fast. The whole capital went into lockdown. Every entrance and exit was being checked. The tension in the air was sharp. Still, I firmly believed the most dangerous place was the safest place. My half-sister whispered anxiously, "We can't stay here, can we?" "Why not? Who would ever guess we came right back to Nanfeng Court?" Yes, we had returned to the pleasure house, and we were sitting in a room only 1 screen wall away from where we'd been earlier. Through the open window I could see chaos outside. Pei Shu and Pei Huai sat astride their tall war horses. Pei Huai reported, "Father, the city gates are locked down. Every post has been searched. There's no trace of them. Could you have seen wrong?" I cupped my hands around my mouth, leaned toward my half-sister, and whispered into her ear, "Told you, they'll never find us." She gave me a proud, approving look. But Pei Shua shut it down instantly. "No, knowing Jiang Shushua, she's probably somewhere nearby, enjoying the sight of us running in circles looking for her." His certainty was terrifying, like he could hear the thoughts in my head. Me, my half-sister. Pei Shua suddenly looked up, and just like that, from below to above across the distance, his eyes landed directly on me. Silence crashed down. I gave the world's most awkward laugh. What a coincidence. Truthfully, I was fine. Pei Shua, being older, was at least steadier by nature. Aside from the armored pei guards blocking me every time I walked near the courtyard gate. "Madam, please don't make this hard for us. Please return inside." I wasn't mistreated. But my half-sister, that was another story. Pei Huai was wild, unruly, impossible to control. Who knew if he'd handle her gently or not? I had to find a way past the guards to go check on her. So when Pei Shua returned from duty, I was already waiting in the room. "Why did you post people to watch me?" I poured myself a cup of the rare imperial spring tea from his private stash and sipped. "I don't like being stared at." Pei Shua knew exactly what I was thinking. His face was unreadable. "You're planning to run again." "I am not. Why would I? Absolutely not." He didn't buy a single word, keeping his eyes locked on me. "They're only watching. They won't get in your way." I slowly turned my teacup and spilled the contents onto his military uniform. Pei Shua's voice dropped. "What are you doing?" He was about to find out. I grabbed his collar, pulling him down toward me. Then, with practiced ease, I kissed him. When I pulled back, my gaze drifted meaningfully to the now wet patch on his clothes. I raised an eyebrow. "So, still think the men outside won't be in the way?" A vein throbbed on his forehead. His knuckles cracked as he clenched his fists. It was a miracle he didn't drag me out then and there and teach me a lesson in front of everyone. Finally, he shut his eyes, defeated, and issued the order. "All of you leave." The courtyard emptied. The air in the room tightened like a pulled bowstring. Pei Shua reached for his own belt. His armor clattered to the ground with a sharp metallic sound. "Jiang Shushua," he said coldly, "don't regret this. I take back what I said about Pei Shua being steady. When this man goes all in, he goes all in, ruthless, mind-blanking, absolutely without restraint. Everything afterward, I don't even remember. What I do know is that the next morning, my bones felt like water and my legs were jelly. I was crawling, literally crawling, toward the door on sheer willpower alone. I hadn't made it far when a tall shadow fell over my head. I turned my neck stiffly. Paisho was standing right in front of me. And what is Madame doing so early in the morning? Was he blind? He had to be doing this on purpose. I said flatly, visiting your grave. Paishua didn't get angry at all. He bent down, scooped me up by the knees, and lifted me effortlessly into his arms. Thank you. Oh. I bounced in his hold. I struggled twice, but struggling against a battle-hardened general was like scratching an itch. When he set me back down on the bed, I gave up pretending. Yes, I'm going to grab my sister and run. I'm not divorcing anymore. This time I'm abandoning you. Paishua froze. His lowered lashes cast messy shadows over his cheeks, making this big, hard-edged man look almost pitiful. Pei Huai brought a woman home because he behaved improperly, he said softly. Why must you blame me for it? That makes no sense. I rolled my eyes, wrapped myself tighter in the blanket, and turned my back to him. You're not exactly innocent either. Pei Hua hesitated. What do you mean? What do I mean? He dared to act clueless? I rolled my eyes again, hard, and kicked him away like he was a dog trying to sniff a meaty bone. Everyone knows you brought Pei Huai back from the battlefield when you were 12. Like father, like son. You really have the nerve to scold him for bringing home a woman? Didn't he learn that from you? Paishua blinked. His ears slowly turned red. His cold voice softened ever so slightly. You're leaving me because of that. Are you jealous? I shot back way too quickly. I am not. He did not believe me for a second. The corners of his mouth quirked up, smug and unstoppable. All right. You're not jealous. I'm the one insisting on explaining, so actually Pei Huai isn't my biological son. I had barely lifted my gaze to look at him when he continued. He's the orphan of my former superior. His father took good care of me back then but died on the battlefield. His mother was pregnant with him but died in childbirth from grief. His voice carried enough weight and sincerity to make it believable. Still, I couldn't help asking, And you never mentioned this before? Paishua thought for a moment and answered with ridiculous seriousness. You never asked. Oh, and besides, he added calmly, I never imagined rumors would spread that I was impotent and fathered a son at 12. To be fair, he had a point. After thinking it through, I nodded. That rumor really doesn't make any sense. Since we were already talking, I brought up the delicate, pregnant little white flower girl Pei Huai brought home that I scrunched my nose. And what about her? Pei Shuo answered, also a widow. Excuse me? Were father and son running some kind of battlefield rescue service? What were the odds? If she's a widow, why didn't he say so? I am a hot-tempered, suspicious poison-dash woman that at this point I was beginning to doubt everything, and my tone was not pleasant. My half-sister is a refined lady. She'd definitely be understanding about all this. Pei Shua stayed calm, soothing my temper while explaining clearly. First, he only said one sentence before I beat him unconscious with the family whip. Second, that woman's background is complicated. The woman and one of the soldiers under Pei Huai's command had grown up together. But the soldier was poor and couldn't afford to marry her. He could only watch as she was sold to a brothel. Later, that soldier died, taking a blade for Pei Huai. His dying wish was for Pei Huai to use his savings to buy her freedom. When she was finally freed, Pei Shuo continued, his large hand threading through my hair. If she hadn't been carrying his posthumous child, she would have taken her own life on the spot. So Pei Huai didn't dare upset her. He planned to tell us privately. With that, the misunderstanding was finally cleared. Pei Shua asked, Can Madam give me one more chance? I will make it up to you. My heart had already softened, but my mouth stayed stubborn. That depends on your performance. Pei Shua's sharp, beautiful eyes curved as he repeated those 4 words. Depends on my performance, rolling them slowly on his tongue. Then his gaze darkened, voice dropping dangerously. I will make sure to perform well. The next morning, the guards around our courtyard were gone. Summer sunlight poured in, bright and blinding. At my bedside sat my half-sister, fighting sleep. She looked just as exhausted as I was. Her thin gauzy robes couldn't hide the scattering of marks across her collarbone. I understood immediately. You and Pei Hui made up? Her face flushed like she'd sipped hidden wine. She whispered, We reconciled. And how do you feel? I meant, does she still plan to run? Should I prepare? But she answered with something that even I, a seasoned poison woman, wasn't ready for. It was kind of amazing. I stared at her. What? All right then. Escape plan cancelled. Back at the Pei residence, life returned to normal except that every morning and evening, during roll call or inspection, Pei Shuo and Pei Huai, pretending to enjoy the pavilion outside or feigning a game of chess, would perk up their ears. They chatted casually, but as warriors with heightened senses, their attention was entirely focused on my courtyard, perfectly catching all the little disputes, tattles, and teasing exchanges between my sister and me. Eventually, my throat dry, I asked my half-sister, So are you divorcing? She shook her head. Forget it. Not divorcing. I nodded. All right. If you're not divorcing, neither am I. A short distance away, the two of them exhaled in unison, glanced at each other and smiled, clinking their cups together. Made it through another crisis. A quiet celebration for narrowly escaping another round of sisterly discussions about ending up widows. The chemistry between our badass poison master and the general is just unmatched, right? Turning that cheating scumbag into her stepson has to be the ultimate power move. Would you ever have the guts to pull off a revenge like this, or would you handle it differently? Let me know what you would do in the comments below. If you love this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Moonlit Love Stories for more satisfying web novels. See you in the next video.